to really participate not only in the implementation of a brand new plan management, but also in many other things. And I want you to be aware of that. So let us begin our class. And I'm glad to see you all here tonight. Really want to thank you for the support and the interest of continue growing in different spots of your careers, But let's talk about crisis management. Corporate America really is not the only community vulnerable to crisis perils. No sector really of the society in the United States, and for that matter in the world, is immune to problems like this. And despite of the root cause of what causes this crisis, really guide managers and leaders to deciding what to do when we get struck with surprises like this. In response to that reality, crisis management policies, strategies, and practices have been developed and adapted across multiple disciplines in industry. And tonight, that's what we're going to be talking very quickly. There's not really too much tonight. We're going to do theories and models and look at crisis management. We're also going to look at what a life cycle in crisis management is. Crisis management plan, that's something that we all need to do how to put together. Crisis leadership, in that one, I want you to really focus very much. And in the last slide, in where I'm going to try to go and show you what is expecting from leaders during crisis management, okay? So let's talk a little bit about the theories associated with crisis management. A crisis mindset really requires the ability to think of the worst case scenario while simultaneously suggesting a number of solutions. Of course, trial and error is an accepted discipline, but really it probably won't work very well on the first line of defense. So understanding the types of models and theories associated with crisis management is really necessary for us leaders to prepare for unforeseen events. One of the most important subjects among all theories here will be crisis leadership, and where we have picked on the brains of Dr. Erica James, the dean at the Wharton School of Business of the University of Pennsylvania, in where she provides a set of skills that set us apart from others and that will help us and benefits us leaders to prepare for issues of crisis in our companies. So the first one is crisis management strategy, okay? Better known as CMS, is really a corporate development strategy designed primarily to prevent crisis for follow-up company advancements. Thus, CMS is a synthesis of a strategic management. It includes a projection of the future based on ongoing monitoring of the business internal and external environments. Okay, that's the strategy behind this. The crisis management models, I think that you can see, I have put in here a major crisis model. I guess is a picture in where I show how theorists and professors and all of them guys came up with the ideas of what are the stages of these crisis models. So tonight we are going to browse real quick on one of these 4 stages crisis model, and we are going to pick on Gonzalez, Herrero, and Pratt is one of the most famous ones, and we'll touch bases on that. Management issues. The management issues begin by diagnosing an impending trouble or danger signals the company begins to detect. It's the first steps of identifying what the crisis looked like, i.e., when the pandemic struck, one of the first things that we did as leaders was, now what? What do we do now? Well, planning and prevention is the second step, and that is something that are done by choosing the appropriate turnaround strategy and its particular application to the management issues to prioritize and, if possible, consolidate the problems that creates the crisis. This is the time where we're trying to get as much information as we can to make up what is it that the crisis looked like, what is the magnitude of what hit us just now. And I think that we took a little bit of time on trying to figure it out between temperatures and recommendations and possibly shots and all those things. But at the end, the crisis settled down because we figured it out. The leaders of the nation figured it out, especially the leaders from the CDC. Then is the crisis itself, the third stage. And this stage implements the strategy changes during the process to stop the crisis. So it's right there in the crisis. Here, we will require the necessary leadership support. So all hands are on deck. At that point, in your company, you get the general manager, the vice president, everybody on board, because everyone has to go into a meeting, on a think tank meeting, to try to put together the crisis implementation plan. And then is the post-crisis, which is, of course, the stage in where we must review the strategy implemented just now and during the crisis to improve it and to make something better for the next time. Hopefully no next time will happen, but we need to create this plan in where we can look at the strategic approach and make it better, even though now we are in the post-crisis stage. So we will continue monitoring after the crisis. Crisis management planning theory. Of course, no corporation look forward facing any type of situation and any type of disruption to our business, especially the ones that stimulate extensive media coverage. Okay, so crisis management planning deals with providing the best response to a crisis. That's the theory behind crisis management planning. And then contingency planning theory, which is preparing contingency plans as part of the crisis management plan, is the first step to ensuring that the organization is appropriately prepared for a crisis. So I think that we are all familiar with this type of contingency planning because we have rehearsed it for years. Crisis management teams rehearse a crisis plan by developing a simulated scenario to use as a drill. And I think Sean and all of you can relate to those unexpected fire alarm drills that we go through in the industry. So that is a contingency plan given by the government. So during this contingency plan, of course, we need to really focus on designating the person or the people that are going to be involved. We're going to have to think about a person that can be the company spokesperson or the crisis team member group or whatever, so they can face the media. Corporations with the media, cooperation with the media, of course, is crucial in an emergency, ensuring all questions are answered on time and provided information on what was done to resolve this situation. And of course, we're looking for the truth, so you need to be transparent and so forth, or the person that is going to represent the company to answer to the news. Business continuity theory is when a crisis really causes significant organizational disruption, a business continuity plan can help minimize the interruption. That is the first thing to do. One must really identify the critical functions and process to keep the organization running. So this business continuity theory explained to us that we must have something in place so to minimize the disruption of production and so forth. One of the things that I remember, because at the time of the pandemic, I was in in South America. But then when I came back and I reincorporated in the company that I used to work for, I immediately saw alcohol in the front door, in the front gate. I saw screens. I saw thermometers that would shoot in your brain, in your forehead, a laser, and read the temperature. Those are the things that they need to be in place as a business continuity, to organize yourself so no interruption to production, no interruption to operations will take place. Structural function system theory, providing information to an organization during a crisis is critical to effective crisis management. The structural function system theory addresses the intricacies of information network and levels of command, making up organizational communication. This is very, very, let me see, I think Gary just came in. This is very important, okay? Diffusion of innovation theory. The diffusion of innovation theory can be applied to sharing information. This describes how innovation is disseminated and communicated through specific channels over some time. Okay, diffusion of innovation and communication happens when an individual expresses a new idea to one or several people. So that is another theory among the major crisis models. The role of apologies in crisis management, there has been a debate about this, but some evidence indicates that compensation and sympathy are adequate as an apology in shaping people's perception of the organization taking responsibility for the crisis. So it really is important that us as leaders encourage the people that are in charge to communicate the latest and greatest news of how the crisis is going on in our company, that person is as transparent as possible, because you really need to be open and apologetic. If it was your fault, admit it and say, we apologize. And this happened with these Alaska excursion on the sea, when all that petroleum went down. The British had also an excursion off the coast of Louisiana, I believe, or Texas, somewhere in there, and created a tremendous environmental hazard. And of course, they came up front and they were sincere, and they knew that they were going to end up paying zillions of dollars, but at least you were honest about it, and that allows the company I think it's BI, isn't it? BP, British Petroleum, continues business here in the United States, despite of the fines that they incur. And then that will take us into crisis leadership. Dr. James identified 5 leadership skills that facilitate organizational restructuring during and after the crisis. She recommends building an environment of trust, and this is for us leaders. She recommends reforming the organizational mindset, identifying obvious and obscure weakness of the organization, making wise and rapid decisions, as well as taking courageous action, and learning from crisis to effect change. So crisis leadership research has concluded that leadership action crises reflect an organization's competency, because the test of problem demonstrates how well the institution's leadership structure serves the organization's goals and withstands crisis. So it is very important, okay, to develop an adequate human resource when building organization capabilities through crisis management, specifically at the level of executive leadership, and that is what it is. The unequal human capital theory, that's another one that says James postulates that organizational crisis can result from discrimination lawsuits. I never heard that one, but that's something that I found out. Dr. James' theory of unequal human capital and social position derived from economic views of human and social capital, concluding that minority employees receive fewer organizational rewards than those with access to executive management. In recent studies, by the way, of managers in the Fortune 500 company, race was a predictor of promotion opportunity or lack thereof. Thus, the discrimination, according to Dr. James, lawsuits can invite adverse stakeholders' reactions, damage the company's reputation, and threaten corporate survival. So it is up to the executive groups of every corporation to really understand that if the government provides support, economic support, or even if the community support you to resolve an issue, you need to distribute that equally among everyone in the corporation. And social media and crisis management, well, that social media have an accelerated now the speed by which the information goes on the air, and then the crisis is spread very, very quickly, and there's all rumors and superstitions, and that's just the nature of this issue. So the viral effect of social network such as Twitter, for instance, means the stakeholders can break the news faster than traditional media, making managing any problem harder. So this can be mitigated by having the proper training, policy, and social media monitoring tools to detect the signs of crisis. Breaking organizations should really have a planned approach to releasing information. In some companies, they create a group of people that come out. I know that as I remember, when there was issues of crisis, such as was the Discovery explosion, the command of NASA, and there were 6 people, were sitting on a long table, and they all answer at the same time, and that's how they communicate to the news the situation. Okay, so that is what we have on theories. I want you to understand that this section, crisis leadership, is something that we are going to visit back when we go back to the next slide, also slide 7. At this point, I would like to ask if any of you can help us out with some crisis around your environments. If you have seen anything related to what we just went through. Anyone?
I would say that I haven't seen anything, as specific, but I did have a question,
Sure.
just kind of about the scenario that you posed, because we actually talked about the NASA incident in my business class, but it was posed as a different scenario, essentially asking us, how would we calculate risk in a situation like that, where you have people who are closer to certain situations indicating if this is a good decision or if it isn't.
Sure.
So I would say my question is, especially, with just how the market is, in tech and like all the tech layoffs, to me, I would assume that's more of a crisis. But, what would, and maybe you might get to this in the lesson, so sorry if I'm getting ahead, but,
No, that's fine.
but what would be in situations like that, especially when it comes to just lives and, in the industry that I work in, I have to communicate to people, things that are relevant in the market, so how would you kind of approach a situation where it's like this to someone, this is a dire situation, this is their livelihood, this is their life. Like, how would you approach that in a way that's sensitive, especially in situations where you have to do like mass layoffs? Because to me, I would assume that would be a crisis situation if I'm doing like mass layoffs. So how would you like approach, a situation like that,
Well,
or even set the stage to kind of plan for something as like that?
well, in the case of the airspace that you cited during the explosion, that we had back in the 80s, um, it was a consensus of all of our management, to get together and address it. But at the same time, it didn't cost no jobs,
Mhm.
although many really left. They quit. I stayed with them, but the majority quit. But in the event of a crisis in a corporation, I'll tell you right now that back in the 90s, when Anheuser-Busch decided to modernize the plants and automate many of the things, we had several meetings with the executives to try to see what the approach to take. And the approach that we took at the time was nobody gets laid off. Uh, Instead of that, we will train them, we will prepare them, and then we'll do tuition. And we will give early retirement package to 30,000 people. And I thought it was very noble by the corporation to do something of that nature. Now,
Mhm.
in the issue of risk, obviously anything is risky. If we would have known what would be the outcome of that, we would have been, very, very, very much on the spot. But we did not. We went on and we sat down and we talked to everyone in the floor, from people that were working there since the 60s, okay, since the late 50s. And to be honest with you, without their input, we would not be able to do any of the programming of any algorithms to do this sequentially properly. So we needed them. And when you go to a person like that, that is still have 5 or 6 years or even 10 years before retirement, Bush did something very interesting. They said, look, in 10 years, I'm going to give you your 10 years salary towards your retirement. And I'm going to allow you to retire early so you can withdraw your retirement from the company. And you can, you can do that, or you can stay with us, because no one can understand how to drive these machines better than you. And it was a very nice way to really replace humans with artificial intelligence. And
Mhm.
nowadays, the massive amount of unemployment, the things that you're seeing happening, for the most part, what I see is a tremendous amount of political involvement on trying to do this, to to show the left is bad. Yeah, it's really bad. It's really, really awful. When you have a Twitter boss that can do that and lays people off, and Apple follows on through. So I think, to be honest with you, it's pretty much up to the leadership and their ethical um, principles to do
Mhm.
this, to do this in the best way possible without harming a lot of people. And actually, August Bush III came to Los Angeles because we were the first to do it, the guinea pigs. He came in and he had 450 employees, and August took the time to talk to at least 50% of them in person, because most of them work with her father. So he went and talked to them, and he came back and he understood that it was going to be unreasonable to say this group goes and gets laid off, because that's not the way you do it.
Mhm.
So ethically, he was absolutely correct. And I will encourage any executive that has to cross that bridge to do it in the most ethical way possible without hurting, because every one of them represents a great part of the community, because everyone has a family. So
Mhm.
that's the best I can answer that to you. Did I say anything? Anybody wants to help?
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely kind of tapers along the lines of, I would say something that is more relevant to my core values. Like, I would say I'm more, more centered on a people first modality versus, profit first. And I think that if you're able to structure your company well, then you won't have to resort to, treating human people as if they're disposable, and I think that's a trend that we're seeing, and then you have a lot of these robotics companies or a lot of these other companies that are compensating for that by replacing people with robotics, or saying like, well, people don't want these low level jobs, so let's just kick everybody out and just replace them with robots.
No,
Um,
that's unheard. That should not be that way. It
yeah.
never should be that way. They need to have an active saying about it. They need to say to us, does it make you uncomfortable to see this? And now all the heavy work, because it was funny. I have people that I would say, but what about if everything fails and you don't have an e-stop and the brew is moving tons of beer from one kettle to the other one? How do you stop it if you don't have a way to, the old man will look at me and say, come with me, Ricky, I'm going to show you a secret. And we will go behind the cabinets in where everything was wire. And he will say, see this wire? See, if I pull this wire, every kettle will stop.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. So then when I did the design part with the other guys, we'll remember that every kettle needed to have an e-stop. so it was a combination of things like that. So, okay. So if I answer that, that's great. But we're going to go to the second one. Okay. Hello, Gary. How are you? Okay.
I'm doing great.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it took me a minute to find the unmute button.
Okay, guys, we're going to, well, happy to see you here. We're going to now define crisis management. Okay, in contrast to risk management, which is what you, Christy, brought up to me, which involves assessing potential threats and finding the best ways to avoid those threats. Crisis management involves dealing with the threats before, during, and after they had occurred. Okay, after they have occurred, that's when you have a crisis management that you need to implement. It is a discipline within the broader context of management, consisting of skills and techniques required to identify, assess, understand, and cope with a difficult situation, especially from when it first occurs to the point that recovery procedures starts. So having said that, crisis management is defined as a situation-based management system with clear roles and responsibilities and company-wide process-related organizational requirements, okay? This process is a disrupted and unexpected event that threatens to harm organizations or their stakeholders or everybody else. How? Well, I'll tell you how. When a brand, when a company, when an organization or any institution faces an issue that wasn't foreseen, the problem can become very destructive. At the same time, an emergency can create an issue. That crisis can trigger lots of problems, not a single one, depending on the gravity of the situation, but many of them, like one that happened January 6th at the Hill. Remember, that was a crisis. So what type of crises are there? Well, the type of crises are, I'm listed right on the right side of this presentation slide. They have natural crises, and everybody knows that typical crises, typical natural disasters, environmental phenomena like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tornadoes, hurricane floods, landslides, tsunami, storms, and droughts that threaten life, property, and the environment itself. Those are natural crises. That's something that we have very little control of it, many of them, because it's out of the control of humans. But for instance, COVID provoked disturbances in the economic and financial part of the business and developed other crises, such as lower the number of employees, not casualties, making a hole in the industry and driving business activities useless for human needs, and making raw materials disappear, blocking shipments, and more. Then we have technology crisis. All you technological people, listen to this. Technological crises are caused by the human application of science and technology. Technological accidents are inevitable. Occurs when technology becomes complex and coupled, and something goes wrong in the system. Some technological crises occur when human error causes disruptions. People tend to assign blame for a technological disaster because technology is subject to human manipulation, whereas they do not hold anyone responsible for a natural disaster. The crisis is categorized as a mega damage when an accident creates significant environmental damage, like the Chernobyl or the Exxon Valdez oil spill that we talked about a minute ago. Then confrontational crisis. This occurs when discontented individuals and groups of individuals, fight businesses, the government, and various interest groups to win acceptance to their demands and expectations. This is something that is happening today. It's a confrontational crisis all over the world, particularly in Peru, Carlos, if I don't mistake. These are the kind of groups that are burning and destroying the city, demanding something, and that is a confrontational crisis. The standard type of confrontation crisis are boycotts, and other types are picketing, sit-ins, ultimatums to those in authority, blockade or occupation of buildings, closing and restricting roads, and resisting or disobeying the authorities. Crisis of malevolence. An organization faces crisis of malignancy when opponents or individuals use illegal means or other extreme tactics to express hostility or anger toward or seek gain from a company, country, or economic system, perhaps within the aim of try to destabilize and destroy some system. Sample crises include products tampering, kidnapping, malicious rumors, terrorism, cyber crimes, espionage. Everybody remembers the Chicago Tylenol murders. Remember? The 8 people of one family, they all died together because some nut decided to open the capsules and put cyanide instead of leaving the medication alone. And it was so deceitful that these people opened the Tylenols and closed it down so detailed that people could not tell that the bottle was tampered, and people died because of that. So that is a crisis of malevolence. Crisis of organizational misdeeds. This type occurs when management takes action it knows that will harm or place stakeholders at risk for harm without adequate precautions. Okay, that's what crisis of organizational misdeeds, and I have 3 things to tell you about that. Crisis of SKU management value. This is caused when managers favor short-term economic gains and neglect broader social matters and stakeholders other than investors. Crisis of deception. This is a fraud. Crisis occurs when management conceals or misrepresents information about itself and its products in dealing with consumers and others. This is where BBB comes very handy. Crisis of management misconduct. Some crises are caused not only by skewed values and deception, but deliberate immorality and illegality. Workplace violence, that's another violence type in crisis. This crisis occurs when an employee or former employee commits violence against other employees on organizational grounds. Parking lots, fights, that type of thing. Crisis due to rumors. False information about an organization or its products create a crisis, hurting its reputation. A lot of people, I honestly believe that there's a lot of people that are paying for that January 6th because they just follow the big leader. So, now they're paying because they follow the rumors. A sample links the organization to radical groups or stories of contaminated products. And then finally, social media crisis. An event that affects the brand's name and reputation due to poor communication and includes critical personal, religious, and political beliefs can lead to a social media crisis. Okay, so in crisis management, we talk about crisis theory when we have some ideas or strategies to take care of an unplanned situation within our organization. So what is a life cycle? A crisis can quickly arise from devastating events or a series of unattended critical events. But either way, it happens. A problem can seriously threaten a business' core objectives, reputation, and viability. Moreover, once underway, the crisis doesn't just burn bright, then suddenly extinguish. No, that's because the problem is multi-layered and multidimensional. So a concept familiar to marketeers, they call product life cycle, was taken into crisis management life cycles, which starts with a few primary phases. If you correctly identify each step, you will be better equipped to make appropriate decisions, okay, for that stage to recover efficiently from the crisis. So understand that the crisis management life cycles begin, middle, and the end framework is just a start in any case. Crucial start, but a start all the same. That's because the stages of crisis don't break down that neatly. Advanced crisis management techniques rely on a more strategic, cyclical life cycle approach. That's a word for you, cyclical. Here are some of the crisis management life cycles, periods, or phases. During the first build-up phase, okay, the build-up phase, you will see hints of potential crisis brewing, often on social media. At this point, you should look for specific messages that foreshadow a crisis. The impact phase, by the impact phase, that early triggers has morphed into a complete crisis. You should expect to get the most media scrutiny at this point. But it's not over yet, because the chronic crisis phase begins. And this is when the media usually shifts the script from what happened to who to blame, okay? So meanwhile, a crisis siege company still suffers through impact effects, which can be as significant as a physical restoration. And then eventually you'll reach the resolution phase, when the crisis hit company is up and running and hopefully out of the media glare. But in this stage, doesn't include deep analysis and investigation. The company is just biding its time. Wait for the next crisis to strike could be now the problem. So that's why we go into crisis management stages. Let me turn off this fan because I've been under the weather lately and it's not doing me any good. Okay, so stages of crisis management. In here we have define the three basic stages: pre-crisis, crisis event, or during the crisis, and post-crisis. Crisis, the pre-crisis, we already said that this stage is an opportunity for detecting and correcting early warning signals to improve foresights. What we need to do here is identifying risk and planning to minimize those risks. Establish, monitor an early warning system and identify someone to act as a crisis manager. Has any of you been a crisis manager before? Well, we'll talk about that. Then is crisis event. This stage deals with the actual response to a real crisis. This is the time to execute the organization's crisis management response plan, okay? We must be ready to alert, notify, escalate, and manage the situation. So leaders must make the following. You need to convene a crisis management team, and you need to communicate with the employees and the public. We're going to take a lot more indeed in the next slide. Then is post-crisis. All crises must come to an end. But that doesn't mean they won't reoccur. Okay, so especially if the company don't understand this final pro-crisis stage, because during this phase, companies will take the opportunity to look back and reflect, so they don't get a problem next time. And if they do, they will be prepared. So what to do? Well, a full review of the crisis management response plan is a must. So you guys, you need to continue doing that. And the crisis management, of course, that review will consist of account for and demobilize resources. You initiate post-incident recovery and evaluate documents the effectiveness of the operations. And also, the crisis manager will continue to meet with the crisis management team to debrief all relevant people and recommend improvements and for future crisis management. Before we go into the plan, I think that we have talked a lot about the definition of crisis management and the life cycle. And I ask a question: has any of you been even part of a crisis management team? I know I have, but it doesn't make sense for me to tell you my stories. I want to hear from you. I am quite sure, crowd, that you have been part of some other crisis. You know, I mean, with all, you know, with what you see here, and I think I put an example in there. It was an ammonia leak. Do you see that in the picture?
Yeah, I saw that.
You did. let me, you know, I don't think that Sean saw it, but you
I
see,
saw it. Yeah.
you see this?
I saw it.
And in this
That's a
incident,
regular occurrence.
yeah, the incident commander, and then the plan takes effect. You think you can enlighten us on something like this, and perhaps tell us something about these steps that I just described, the pre-crisis, the actual event? I'm sure that you were probably in the middle of the event when something like that happened. It's funny because when I was a director of engineer, actually, what they call, well, I'm sure when I had Mr. Crow come into our company, it was, as a matter of fact, because we had 10 to 12 people taken to the hospital because we had one of those leaks. So he became part of the strategic plan to defend. And one of the things that he did was that he and I look at each other and say, yeah, we need to do this now. He said to me, one of the things I need to do is let me go and do an inspection of your pipes, because if it's something that we know is that this leak happened because of that picture that you're showing me, and it had a hole. So let me go up there, and that's how he started. Remember that, Sean?
Oh, I remember that quite well. I remember that there was a lot of tags on there where another contractor had supposedly had done, non-destructive testing and had said that the piping was okay. And you may recall the photographs that we took of that tag, an inspection point tag, and the pipe is literally flaking and scaling because it's so corroded.
I remember very distinctively because you brought me the pictures, and I lost my appetite. And I tell you, that's very difficult for me to lose my appetite. That I lost my appetite just looking at the pictures, and then turning around and look at Gary's face, and it was kind of like, how in the world you guys ever done that? So the next,
Yeah, that place was. It was a mess when we got there. But and of course, Gary was involved in the mitigation.
it was really bad. And at that time, we went up there to the controller, and I said, I don't know how, but you need to come up with money because we're going to replace the pipes.
I understand the pipe still has rotten pipe up there.
There's dozens of pressure relief valves that have not been changed for years, and we don't have a PSM plan in place. PSM stands for plant safety, right?
Process safety management.
And we start working on this. We actually chair a crisis together. At least 50% of this class have done that with me. So it was really, really critical. Thank you for sharing, Sean. I was going to call you. Thank you for sharing 6699507.
Yeah, I don't know what that number means, but
This is your telephone, brother.
I don't recognize that number. No.
Well, we'll call you 007. How's that? We'll call you
007. There you go. Yes.
Okay, so let's go back because we're almost done. So we're going to be looking at now a crisis. Let's see, crisis management plan. A crisis plan is the physical manifestation of crisis management for creating a digital document outlining a personal or organizational reaction to crisis. I'll tell you, the pictures that we're taking were all put together in a report that I did with the help of Sean and Gary, because we needed to build our case. All companies will never help you economically to resolve their problem. The only thing that we had in our favor at that time was, or you fix this, or I'm not going to help you in OSHA, and if they throw a lock on your company, it'll be your responsibility. That makes them move very quickly. Okay? Organizations have been subject to compliance with federal regulations for years. And you know what they use? They use something called the Material Safety Data Sheet. Is everybody familiar with this type of document?
Yeah, it's very useful.
Is the MS?
It's been renamed though, Rick. It's now known as the SDS, Safety Data Sheet.
Now they change it, and let me see, they change it. I had a sample somewhere, but I wanted to let you know that is what happened. They use that particular form. I don't know if you see it, but you see this? Okay, that's an old MSDS, and of course they changed the nomenclature. But as you can see here, you have hazard identifications and all of the things, potential health effects. I think the context probably have become much more effective, but nevertheless, it tells you the first aid measurements and firefighting measurements and so forth and so forth. I wanted to share this with you guys because many of you are going to say, well, if we have that already, why do we need to worry about if there's a form? Well, I'll tell you what, there is a form, yeah, material handling, which provides the guidance and the standards for handling an unsafe material. However, many institutions don't handle hazard materials and must create a document with safety and security being the primary concerns in a crisis. Mainly when we're talking about mass shootings, terrorist attacks, company financial problems, and suddenly surprises, that type of things that doesn't constitute 9/11, that was a crisis. We need to really be cognizant of the fact that we need to create a plan, no depend on a form, but creating an actual plan. So what do we do to create an action plan? You need to prepare in advance. You need to identify the risk. You need to start creating a plan by identifying the potential crisis. Rather than doing it in your own, involve the company leadership team, all of them, the crisis response team, the relevant employees, and other stakeholders, okay? So this further cultivates a relationship built on trust and collaboration. So apply all you learned during the recent pandemic of the COVID-2020 or COVID-19. Let's focus on that and try to mitigating and identifying potential crises. We need to predict the impact on the business, okay? When you and your team have identified potential threats, the next stage of creating a crisis management plan is to determine the potential impact of such an event on your business, okay? Your accounting software is valuable, so try to use that as a predictor of these crises. You need to identify responses. When you identify potential risk and assess the possible impacts on your business, you and your team can start identifying contingencies to help your company respond effectively. To do this by considering the various steps required to resolve or mitigate each issue, the resources needed to happen, and how employees and multiple departments can get involved. And then, only then, create the plan. Now you can start building the plan when the above 3 initial steps are complete. After identifying the potential threat, assessing their impact, and identifying contingencies, you can begin fleshing out the project in collaboration with employees. Listen to everyone's idea, challenge concepts that need further thought, and work together to determine the best corrective action. Develop an alert indicator, i.e., you see it here on the right hand, the red, yellow, and green. Develop that indicator that signifies an event that may be or could be liable to cause a significant impact on the organization, okay? If you're reading there, these are the stages that you need to take when the crisis is beginning to hit your organization. So ensure that everybody have access to this, familiarize your people, your employees, show them this alert status and what to do. Basically, the assessment, the alert status, the assessment that they need to do when they have a crisis coming their way. And of course, most important, create a communication hub. In that respect, you need to create a group excuse me just a second, you need to really create a hub in where you're going to request the support of human resources and representative that will help you direct the hub and provide the latest information to the company, to the clients, and to the news. And reconsider the plan regularly. Again, you're going to need to go back and revisit that and do this in a way that you can mitigate, and you think about what's wrong and what's happening and how can you prevent this particular crisis. And of course you cannot think of every crisis that is going to happen, but you can anticipate and really understand what to do the next time you have a crisis like that. That brings us to crisis leadership. This is one before the last one slide. This is Erica James. She defined organizational crisis as any emotionally charged situation that, once it becomes public, invites negative stakeholder reaction and thereby has the potential to threaten the financial well-being, reputation, or the survival of the firm. So she further identified two types of organizational crisis. The crisis that occurs without warning and beyond the institutional control, and the smoldering crisis. That one differs from crisis in that they begin as minor internal issues that develop into crisis status due to the manager's negligence. So James categorized 5 phases of crisis that require specific crisis leadership competencies. Focus on this, please, because these are the competencies that she sees that we need to really follow. Signal detection. We talk about the signal detection over and over already, but it's all about looking at the red flags that shows on your horizon that suggest a possibility of a problem. The detection stage of the emergency includes sense making, which represents an attempt to create order and make sense retrospectively of what occurs, and the perspective taking, which is the ability to consider another person or group's points of view. Number 2, preparation and prevention. During this stage, crisis handlers begin preparing for or averting the crisis foreshadowing in the signal detection stage. Organizations like the Red Cross aim to prepare for and prevent scaling concerns. Walmart did a fantastic job during the Gulf Coast when we have that Hurricane Katrina hitting the coast of Louisiana. Number 3, containment and damage control. The goal of crisis containment and damage control really is to limit the reputational, financial, safety, and other threats to firm survival. These containments is handling, handling how can we prevent the company from stop functioning, from stop working while they are facing a crisis. Business recovery, of course, when an organization crisis hits, organizations must be able to carry on with their business while simultaneously planning how to recover for the damage the situation caused. So that you need to be working actively to pursue organizational resilience and learning, which in the wake of a crisis, organizational decision makers adopt a learning orientation. They use prior experience to develop new routines and behaviors that ultimately change those organizations' operations. So hooray for Dr. James. She really shows us here the 5 steps that we went through. These are the 5 phases of crisis management and how a typical crisis unfolds. That brings us to our last slide. And I think that this is something that I taught during another lecture the last time we were talking about building powerful teams. It's about the leader's attitude while managing a crisis. Okay, it's very simple. I'm not going to take much time on this, but I'm going to tell you that the roles and responsibilities of business leaders have dramatically changed and continues to change after the COVID-19. Okay, today many leaders must make quick and rapid decisions about controlling costs and maintaining liquidity. That has changed because in the past was a little bit different. CEOs really only worry about high growth company, fostering innovation, driving revenue, and gaining market share. Well, now it has changed. They may encounter unforeseen roadblocks doing this, and they need to be prepared. So here is the behaviors that we need to observe as leaders of the corporation handling a crisis. You need to decide of a speed over precision. Okay, you need to define priorities. You need to make intelligent trade-offs. You need to name a decision makers. So only you know your people. So knowing your people, you need to make choices. And those choices will be the people that are going to represent you during the crisis. And also you need to embrace actions. Then we need to adapt boldly. Strong leaders get ahead of changing circumstances. They seek input and information from diverse sources. So you need to decide what not to do. And please publish it, so everybody knows that the plan has changed. You need to throw out yesterday's playbook. That doesn't go anymore. The best leaders adjust quickly and develop new plans of attacks. You need to strengthen direct connections. So you need to really keep your connections that are crucial to have accurate current picture of what's happening on the ground. Okay, so you need to maintain your reliable news, your reliable customers, your reliable the chain link that transfer your equipment or transfer your product. All that you need to be in touch. Also, you need to be reliable in delivering. I mean, because your bosses don't expect that because we have a crisis, you're going to stop. So stay alert and align on the daily dashboard priorities. Write them down, put them in front so your people can read it. Okay. Set new KPIs or other metrics of performances. Choose 3 to 5 metrics that matter the most for the week and have the leaders regularly reporting each of them. Keep in mind and body fighting in good shape. Don't need to mention that too much. All of you follow a very healthy diet. So, and fourth and last is engage for impacts. In times of crisis, no job is more important than taking care of your team. Influential leaders understand their team's circumstances and distractions, but they find ways to engage and motivate clearly and thoroughly, communicating important new goals and information. So you need to connect with individual team members, okay? Reach out for a daily, quote, pulse check, unquote, at least 5. Block out a time in your calendar to do this. This is very important, okay? Or if you are working remote, well, do your Zoom meetings weekly with the people that are far away and highlight the good points and the low points. You need to dig deeper to engage your teams in this case. When communications break down and leaders act without team input, as you can more easily happen when work is remote, they get lousy results. So dig deep. Ask for help is needed. if needed or as needed. It's important that if you feel that you need the support of your upper management, ask for help. Ensure a focus on both customers and employees by, to support your customers, reach out, but first do not harm. Instead, track and document intel across your customer base. To strengthen relationship and build trust, keep the focus of yourself and explore how can you generally help your customer. To support your employees, lead with emotional intelligence. I will repeat this one. This is very important. Lead with emotional intelligence competencies, such as empathy, and focus on safety and health. Find ways to aid frontline employees who cannot work remotely, such as the first responders, couriers, and trash collectors. Collect and amplify positive messages. And this is very important because really, success, acts of kindness, obstacles that have been overcome. Many companies are trying to a noble purpose, such as saving life, manufacturing medical equipment, and so forth and so forth. Whatever your goals, celebrate your daily heroes, please. Remember that simply staying productive in these times is really heroic. So reward them and train them for when the next crisis strike. So this is the behavior that our upper management is expecting from us. Okay, I have an announcement on our next shop that is coming up next month. We're going to be talking about coaching emotions. Let me tell you, change is hard. Ask anyone who has tried to switch careers, develop a new skill, or improve a relationship, or even break up a bad habit. And yet, for most people, change will, at some point, be necessary. A critical step toward fulfilling their potential and achieving their goals at work and at home. They will need the support with this process. What they will need is a coach. That's where you and I come. Whether you are the boss or a colleague or a friend or a spouse, an introvert person or an extrovert person, emotional or analytical, or high or low on the totem pole, you can learn how to facilitate when you and I do it with emotional intelligence. So next month in March, we're going to be talking about the connection between this brain and this heart. It's going to be very interesting. Emotional intelligence can benefit you like it benefit me. I know that is really a tremendous challenge because really, to be honest with you, if we are believers, we know that this world is not going to get any better. But that's okay, so long as you and I do what's right. That's what matters. Any feedback? At this point, I think I concluded tonight.
Well, in my observation in a crisis is the the leadership structure changes. That's typically what causes all the confusion in a crisis. And a lot of the preparation, if you know what the crisis is going to be, like in Sean and my case, we usually know what the crisis is going to be. It's going to be ammonia. So we can tailor to that style crisis, but not every crisis is ammonia, like you're pointing out in your structure. But that's my observation is why the crisis is so so hectic, so uncontrollable, is because not and the preparation and everything you was talking about assist into establishing those leaders even in a crisis situation.
That process has already started. I assembled my team in Jacksonville last week, and to just to let them know what they could expect from me. I said I'm here to be, and I actually used your term, a servant leader. I said I come here with a servant's heart. I said you guys are going to have to help me to understand the processes and everything. I said, and we're going to have to change the culture. Because I'm not here to change everything overnight. I want to learn how things are done, but certain things are going to have to change. Number one, always is going to be the culture of safety.
Yeah, no, this was great. One of the things I enjoy about your workshops is that I feel that it's transferable in a number of different
Direction.
scenarios.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like professionally, personally, like in a number of different scenarios, it's transferable. But this was great. I would say the biggest takeaway for me, of course, is the emotional intelligence element, but then also the humanistic element, like at the end of the day, at the core of everything, these are still people, these are still human beings,
Exactly.
and just kind of taking that into consideration and context when making decisions. Because I will say, for myself personally, especially when I was kind of functioning in leadership for NSLS, we had a lot of fires, to put out a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes that people didn't know about. And it was my first time kind of handling issues of that magnitude. And I was panicking, and they were like, it was just it was a nightmare, the great thing about also that experience for me was being able to make mistakes. But I would say within that also, making mistakes, especially making mistakes, up front and early on, you can correct them. And then it also creates a sense of trust and builds a sense of trust, and shows a level of vulnerability with, those who work with you, work under you, your subordinates, to show that, hey, at the end of the day, we're all human.
Yeah.
Let's kind of tighten this up to make sure that we don't make mistakes that could risk people their lives, so no, this is great. Definitely a lot of takeaways for me, for sure.
The only thing that keeps on moving and moving is the change. So it is crisis after crisis, because change means crisis.
Mhm.
And all we have to do is to be prepared and be aware that moves us, and behind us is always emotions.
Yeah.
And we have to have it in mind that emotions are what guide us and guide them.
Yes.
That's the path we have to follow up, no?
Yes. Thank you. You've been wonderful tonight. And I hope to see you the next time. And good luck to you, all of you. Sean, good luck on the job. Gary, stay away from the pipes. Christine, keep going, keep going. And Carlitos, un fuerte abrazo desde aquí.
Thanks for
Thank you so much.
everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
Hasta luego.
Success
Hasta
for you.
luego. Good night.
Bye-bye.